Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode number 5 of Interview with an NHL Hero here at Heroes of the Crease Goaltending Museum and Memorabilia Limited. I'm your host, as well as the owner at Heroes of the Crease, Bruce Charney. Now, today's special guest has had a long and distinguished hockey career. He holds several single-season goaltending records in the WHL that have still held nearly 30 years later. He's a 1994 Memorial Cup champion, and he also had a 13-season-long professional career in both North America and Europe. Highlighted among it is 6 seasons in the NHL, comprised of 93 regular season and 3 playoff games with your Edmonton Oilers, Chicago Blackhawks, and Los Angeles Kings. Welcome, my very special guest today, Mr. Steve Passmore.
Hey, yours. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us for this fun show that we do, episode number 5 of it now.
My pleasure. It gets me out of making dinner, so I'm good.
There you go. Excuses and fun at the same time. That's the best way to do it.
Absolutely.
And of course, for all of our audience watching here today, as we mentioned in all of our posts, this is a live interactive event as well. So you can write comments on either Facebook or YouTube, wherever we are streaming from. They'll show up on my screen, and if it's a good question, we'll pop it up and see if Mr. Passmore has an answer for us. And if not, then you got a good question that tricked all of us, and that's also fine by us.
Pretty sure that won't happen.
You never know. I've seen some good ones in our past interviews here before. All right. So let's jump right into some of the fun. Let's start in your early days of hockey here. So in 1992, you were drafted 196th overall by the Quebec Nordiques after a season which saw you appear in 71 games for the Victoria Cougars in the WHL. That season saw you record a 15-50-5 record, while also setting WHL records for shots faced, which you averaged about 41 shots against per game, which is a wild number even for the era. That's my opinion. You established a single-season record for games played in a season, as well as most minutes in a season, and all those still stand to this day, which is amazing 30 years later. Do you feel that facing so many shots on what could be best described as a struggling team was a huge factor in preparing you both for the highs and lows of what pro hockey can bring? And perhaps did it even help you with your Kamloops Blazers time after being acquired by them? And this is a final part to that question. Do you find that facing more shots is better than just facing 20 or so per game?
I don't know. It was, I love that you said we were struggling. We were the shits. Those are two totally separate things. But back then, yeah, played 71 out of 72 games. I'm going to go on the record and say that'll never be broken. Very
nice.
A lot of the reasons
it's official.
well, they don't play 72 games anymore, so right. I think it's pretty safe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was a long season for sure. Do I think it made me? I think it did make me better facing that many shots. Mm-hmm. But it was really nice when I got traded to Kamloops. It was like getting paroled. I go up to Kamloops and I remember my first game. I played. We played against PA the first game, and we won 2-1. And they had 21 shots, and everybody's like, "Oh, that was great." I'm like, "That's one period." It was nothing. It was like every night was like a night off. It was awesome.
Very nice. I imagine, yeah, it's a huge change from getting
pucks
thrown at you, just destroyed by pucks. It feels like we're playing with older siblings where they're just firing at you nonstop, and you don't even have equipment.
Yeah, you were the youngest kid, eh? They just put you in that anyway.
Exactly. All right.
Well, I remember once we were in Saskatoon. No, we were in Regina. They had 32 shots in the second period on us in Regina in one game. 32 shots. So when I went to Kamloops and you faced 20 to 28 shots was maybe a tough game, and that was it. So it was a nice break.
That was a good change for sure. All right, so let's talk about your NHL draft, because it led right out of that one season there. So you were drafted by the Quebec Nordiques, which was also
my name out of the hat.
Sorry?
I said I think they pulled my name out of the hat. I mean, I went 196th overall. I think it was me and the janitor left, and I don't even think they knew what position I played.
Yeah, fair enough. Just the last 2 people left in the room. All right.
I think so.
But I think they were a team that was very comparable as well to the Cougars at the time as well, where they were also having a pretty tough seasons with pretty rough records with getting lots of shots against as well. So perhaps they saw something in you that was you could handle that kind of pressure, because that's what Quebec would throw at you if you made it to the team there. That's maybe a possibility.
Maybe. You know what? When I signed in Quebec, they had 8 goalies under contract. So, and I mean, that we're talking Garth Snow, Manny Fernandez, Kluche was there, Tugnut was there, Hexy was there. Like there was a lot of goalies there. It's that's why they sent me back for my 20-year-old year. They didn't have a spot for me. Okay,
fair enough. Did you get a chance to take part in any of their training camps at all, though, or did they just send you back immediately?
No, went to training camp with them twice, actually. Once they had it in Charlevoix. That was awesome. Yeah, just a nice little resort town, and we just went and took over for a week, and I got my per diem money, which is more money than I'd seen yet in my life. So yeah, we just saved it up. They give you an envelope full of cash, and I remember
jackpot.
Yeah, being a small town kid, and that, all that. I took it home. I squirreled it away. We ate ramen. That was it.
There you go. You're eating like kings after that for a few days at least.
Absolutely.
So you got to obviously play around a bit with Joe Sakic and Matt Sundin, and obviously some of those other goalies, including Garth Snow, which we'll touch on a little bit later in the episode here today. So what was that experience like, jumping from juniors into essentially an NHL lineup in training camp there with some real legit legends of the game?
It was great. It was it was everything that you work towards. It was a bit surreal when you walked in. It's like, oh, Joe Sakic. Oh shit, he's actually going to shoot on me. Right? Very, very different feeling. Again, surreal would probably be the best way to put it, because you just don't really believe that these guys, that you're actually on the same sheet of ice with them. So
absolutely.
But a lot of fun at the same time. It definitely an eye opener though, because you're playing in the WHL. You've got maybe 4 or 5 guys on each team that you actually had to watch. And go, okay, they can shoot, they can move. You move up to that next level, and you get to your first NHL camp, and you're going to watch everybody. And there's a lot of boys that can shoot, and some of them they shot and you didn't even know, and you're pulling the puck out of the net. So it was a bit of an eye opener for sure.
Oh, yeah. Well, especially everyone too in training camp is hungry to make a roster as well, especially the guys who aren't shoe-ins. So everyone's going to be going that 100% because they want that spot.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
How did you find out you actually got drafted? Because nowadays, of course, draft is like this huge media circus, whereas back then, a lot of people don't even find out till like years later they were actually drafted.
I'll tell you a really shitty story. My whole family found out at the same time, because so my agent at the time, rest in peace, he actually just passed away not too long ago, Mr. Art Breeze.
Oh, sorry to hear that.
And he convinced me that to go to the draft, because we had 5 teams telling me that I was going to get drafted in the first 3 rounds. So he's like, you got to go to the draft. You got to go to the draft. I'm like, I don't really want to go. Convinced me to go to the draft. Okay. So my whole family's there, and I've got family from Ontario. The draft was in Montreal for them.
Okay.
So we were there, mom, dad, sister, we're all there. And I don't know if you remember that draft year, but that's the year that Russia took over. Right?
Yes.
So they drafted every Russian that ever owned a pair of skates. They took them, right? Like, it was funny. In the first round, you're hearing all these names. It's like, so-and-so, he's got 0 games, 0 assists, 0 points. We'll draft him. Who gives a shit?
Just take a shot, yeah.
Well, it was so I was supposed to go, and it was funny. The night before, I actually had a meeting with San Jose. And they said, you are our 2nd round pick. Like, we're taking you in the 2nd round. That's it. So I was all excited. Get to the draft. You're in Montreal Forum. Really cool. You're there with the family, and everybody's all pumped up, and you're in a stupid cheesy suit. And then So first round goes by, not a big deal. I wasn't expecting to go in the first round. Second round comes and San Jose's next. And so you're all tensed up and you're like, okay,
getting ready to stand up. Yeah.
This is it. And they picked some Russian. And you're like, oh shit, wait a minute. That was supposed to be me. Okay. No big deal. Plans change. You know, Art comes over and he's like, don't worry, things are fine. Third round, San Jose's pick comes up again and you tense up and they picked another Russian. So it was like, uh-oh, well, this isn't good. Then the fourth round, then the fifth round. And I don't and realistically, you're not supposed to go to the draft unless you're in the first three rounds. Like back in the day, that was if you go in the first three rounds, go to the draft. If not, stay home and find out like everybody else. Mm-hmm. But I'm there. And so after the fifth round, there's actually a dinner break. Mm-hmm. And I remember Art walked over to me and he starts walking over to me and I look at him like, oh, fucking turn around. Like don't talk to me. I'm like, I'm angry. Right. Because I'm embarrassed. I'm actually sitting in Montreal Forum with my family, supposed to get drafted. And it's now after the fifth round. I still haven't got drafted. So I remember sitting there, snap my tin of chew, throw in a big chew. I get my family around. Nobody's talking to me. And I remember a Boston scout came up and he's like, hey, he's like, I think we're going to take you in the next round. And I'm like, sit there, spit in my spit cup. And I'm like, I don't give a shit. I don't care. At this point, I'm giving up. I'm done.
Yeah, fair enough. It starts to feel like being chosen last, like to play dodgeball at recess.
Well, it's even worse than that. Like they picked people that weren't even there to play dodgeball before they picked me.
Oh, fair enough.
Right? So I remember sitting there, and it was funny because Quebec met me in the before that. They took me out for dinner, and they said, you know what? We have a ton of goalies. They're like, if you're still around in the ninth round, which we don't think you will be, but if you're there, they're like, we'll take you. Sure enough,
right?
Ninth round, 196th overall. And they took me, and it went from the worst day of your life to the best day of your life in about 3 seconds. So would I have gone? No, God, no. It was a terrible day. But in the end, I got to walk down, and that's what I said. Like they literally, I think it was me and a janitor left there. Me and my family and a janitor. That was it. So,
and you're lucky it wasn't a Russian janitor, because then he would have been drafted.
Yeah. No, that's my fun draft day story right there.
That is interesting for sure. Definitely a different experience than from what I've heard from the last few guys we had on the show here.
Yeah, that's the start to my NHL career right there. It starts at the bottom.
Right, but it still worked out in the end where you ended up making it to the show. Who knows what would have happened in San Jose there, especially given how much of a dumpster fire they were, to be honest, until like 1994 there, when they all of a sudden just turned it around like that.
See, I could have saved that franchise in the beginning.
There you
go. Been the savior.
Yeah, people wouldn't even know who Arturs Urbe is. You would have been the dude, right. And then you would have led Carolina to the Cup final, and you would have won. And
they would have been all different. But the funny thing is their GM, if you go back and look, I think their GM got fired the next week after the draft, because he literally took the list they had and he just went,
just gone rogue.
Yeah. It's like they drafted defensemen that had no points. Yeah, it was crazy.
Very nice. So I'll actually ask you just one more junior question before we move on to some of the meaty stuff of the career there. But Jarome Iginla, everyone knows he's a Hockey Hall of Fame player, a true legend. His first year in the WHL with Kamloops was your final year of juniors. And that's the season which saw the whole team win the Memorial Cup there. Though the team had, of course, many, and I emphasize many, NHL players. I wrote a list down here, which includes Darcy Tucker, Nat Domenicali, Tyson Nash, Nolan Baumgartner, Scott Ferguson, Shane Doan, Brad Lukowicz, Jason Strudwick. List goes on, as well as yourself, of course. Did you ever foresee that the 16-year-old Iginla from Edmonton would eventually turn into that 1,300-point superstar that he eventually became in the NHL?
He was good. Like he was good at 16. He was good, and I think one of the things that the vets on the team can take a little credit. Is we might have knocked a few chips off his shoulder.
Okay.
But he was a super respectful young kid at 16 coming in.
Okay.
Just a good kid, and that you sat there and went, yeah, he's going to be something. Like he was legit, not just his talent level, but his demeanor, the way he carried himself. You can see he went on to carry that all the way through his pro career, and that's just the kind of person he was. But he was a little cocky when he was 16.
Who isn't?
Exactly.
Everyone's a team.
But he went on to back it up. I mean, he had pretty good reason to be cocky.
Okay, fair enough, absolutely. But yeah, definitely with like some of the names you had on the team at the time, and there's some real heavy hitters that were not just enforcers but point getters as well as heavy hitters, and definitely Iginla carried that through his whole career. He didn't mind throwing down the gloves, but he was a real gentlemanly dude on and off the ice, from what I hear. So.
Well, and I mean, you look at Shane Doan too. Not a bad career. He went on to do all right as well. And again, another guy that's just salt of the earth. My decor was untouchable. Lukowicz back then. I think Luke was probably our number 4 guy, and look at the career he went on to have. Strudwick, my favorite defenseman ever, Scott Ferguson.
Right.
Like in my entire career, he's the favorite guy I ever played with, and we just had so much fun. So we had a great team for sure.
Very good. We might actually come back to talk about Scott Ferguson then a bit. Think there might be some fun stories out of that.
Well, there might be a couple.
A couple's good. So before we move on to the meat of the career, we'll talk actually just about you and in terms of goaltending habits. There are a lot of goalies, a lot of players with some unusual or unique pregame rituals. What was your pregame ritual, if you had any, and what is the most bizarre one that you've ever seen, whether it is from a skater or a goalie, and from any point in your career? It doesn't have to be NHL.
You know what? I'm probably, and I think if any of my teammates, you interview any of my teammates, they'll say I was one of the most normal goalies.
For a goalie.
It's always in quotes. I mean, it's a goalie. We're not that normal for sure. But I didn't have a ton of rituals. I just liked having a ton of fun. So that was my biggest thing. I tried doing that whole serious thing where everybody's like, you got to be focused. I couldn't do that. I was exhausted. So I'd focus when the puck was in play, and when it wasn't, I would just relax and look in the crowd and look around and sing songs and have some fun. And before the game, I was the same way. My ritual was nothing. Like there was no ritual, but there were some weird guys. Like so that was a two-sided question. So mine, I didn't have a ton of rituals. I got dressed the same way, and I was always at the rink probably 2.5 hours early because I just like hanging out with the guys. The weirdest one was Jamie Storr.
Okay.
Oh, nuts. So he would come in if Storzy was playing. So after the first period, and I remember we're in LA, he's playing, and he came in, and every time he'd come in, he'd take his upper gear off, he'd lay down on the ground, he'd put his feet up on his bench.
Okay.
And then he would start this ritual where it was like his glove and blocker, and he'd be like, he'd close his eyes and he'd do a rhythm. It was like boom, 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 boom. And he would mimic making saves. And we're sitting there and we're watching, and I'm watching this. First time I saw him, like, this kid's nuts. So he would sit there and he would do this for about 5 minutes, visualizing making these saves. And I remember, who was it? I can't. One of the guys, I think it might have been, it might have been Grimson or something like that. Just looks at me, he's like, "Holy shit, Storzy! If we get that many shots this period, we're screwed anyway. Don't worry about it."
That's awesome.
He would do that between every period. Just the weirdest thing. He gave us goalies a bad name, guys like that.
the Looney Tunes. That's funny.
Absolutely. We're trying to look better in there and trying to be normal and fit in with the rest of the guys, and he's doing that.
That's definitely a unique one I haven't heard before. Usually guys are just particular about how they tape things, or they like put on a pad a certain way, or they talk to their goalposts. But that's it's definitely next level interesting.
No, I didn't have anything super weird like that. I used to talk to my dad passed away young, and I used to actually talk to him during the anthem. That was maybe that's weird.
Okay, well, it's
A little bit weird.
Okay, we'll give that. So, jump back to the NHL here. So, in March of '94, you were traded by the Nordiques to the Edmonton Oilers, and you were in their minors system in Cape Breton. Sorry. In your second year, that was 95-96 for anyone watching, not sure. You ended up appearing in only 2 games before missing nearly 2 seasons of hockey due to what was eventually diagnosed as heavy metal poisoning. How did you first discover that something was wrong? And how long did it take to officially diagnose and treat it?
Oh, well, it actually started the year, my last year in Kamloops. Started cramping up a little bit, but nothing severe. And then my first year pro, it started happening more and more to the point where I couldn't make it through games.
Okay.
I'd be playing, it'd start in the second period, and then the cramps would start, and then they wouldn't go away. And then, a few times I remember I'd go down in the splits or something, and my quad would just go solid. Like it would just,
wow.
So the trainer had to run out, cart me off the ice, and, try and, so they didn't know what it was. And I spent the next 2 years basically being a lab rat. They like everything down to the Mayo Clinic in Minnesota, where all the brilliant doctors came up with, oh, it's genetics, you're screwed. Sorry. It's like, oh.
Wow. And
then, so I didn't, they kept they tried everything. They took me to Edmonton. I had a muscle biopsy done because they thought maybe I had Lou Gehrig's disease. Wow. So they didn't know whether it was life-threatening, whether it was just career-threatening.
Yeah, exactly.
And then actually there was this quack, literally a quack that was friends of Glenn Sather's in Edmonton. He was there doing tests on serial killers to see if I know, I get it. That'd be a little bit crazy. But he was doing tests on serial killers to see if heavy metals had an effect on like if that was a relation.
Okay.
So he called Slats and he's like, let me do this test on him. So they did the hair and blood samples, whatever, sent it away. And it was funny. So this guy calls me up. I'd never met him. And he calls me up and he starts telling me about my personality. He's never met me. And he's like, you're pretty easygoing. I'm like, yeah. And he's like, but you got a really shitty temper. Like, yep, yeah, I do. And he's like, no, like you snap, like you go black. And he's like, I'm like, yeah, pretty much. And so he did. He said he got that just from reading the results. So I was off the charts in copper, arsenic, manganese, and antimony. And I had no lithium and no calcium. So they thought when they were doing the test, they actually thought I was already dead. They thought they were doing the test on the cadaver. And so they had to tell the people, they're like, no, he's playing pro hockey right now. No, he's dead.
Wow.
So, yeah, so he found out, and then we had to find a way to cure it. And actually, they tried a bunch of pills. I think I was up to 49 pills a day. Taking big horse pills, trying to flush it out of my system.
Jeez.
I showed up to Edmonton the next year at training camp, and I failed. And Edmonton basically, they told me to quit hockey. They're like, you're done. So I showed up to training camp. I cramped up on the bike, and which means when you fail your fitness test, it means you failed, right? Like you're suspended without pay. And so they literally said, okay, you're done, retire, quit. And I was
your career before it even really began. That's
and I was 23 at the time, and I didn't want to quit. little bit young.
Mm-hmm.
I'd worked pretty hard to get there. And you know what? I credit my family, my mother probably in particular, that I had a doctor called me up from Calgary and he's like, I can cure you. I'm like, no, okay, cool.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, give me 6 months. And I said, well, you got 3 because I have to do a test January 4th in Edmonton.
Mm-hmm.
And so my mom actually foot the bill for the tests and for the treatment. He said it was this thing called chelation treatment. So I packed up. I moved to Calgary. I lived on in my uncle's house. I was bartending from, what was it, from 10:30 in the morning till 3 in the morning at 2 different jobs. Because I had no job, right? Like,
fair enough.
Edmonton cut me off. Not only were they not paying for treatment, they weren't paying me. So moved there.
Washing their hands of you until the off chance that you're good to come back. That's rough. Nowadays you hear they take a lot better care of people than just sort of throwing them out like scrap heap. Like it seems like that.
Yeah, they'd given up. I mean, they'd spent, don't kid yourself, they'd invested some time and energy into trying to figure it out. But they finally, I think they were just like, cut their losses. Don't know, get this kid to retire. Who gives a shit? And then, and then I went back. I was trying to work out in the gym and stuff like that while working those days. And I went back and I did the physical January 4th. And I passed.
Oh, there you go.
So it's funny because I came out, I finished the physical, I passed, and the trainer's like, but can you play? I'm like, oh, I don't give a shit. Start paying me.
There you go.
I didn't care. And I think they then reimbursed my mother for the medical expenses.
Oh, that's very nice. That's solid of them to do that for
sure.
I
thought that was pretty good.
Yeah. Especially given how much you really had to go through to that point. Though I'm still caught up in that thing with the link, somehow linking the serial killers to you, but that one's interesting.
So if there's any missing bodies, I know nothing about it.
They're definitely not buried under that tree over there.
No.
Very interesting. Do you still have any effects of that today, or is it like completely gone?
No, I did. So I actually continued that chelation for, I think, the next 3 years. It was a continual thing when I moved to Hamilton. The team from Cape Breton moved to Hamilton. And chelation was not super big in Canada at that point, but in the States it was. So I actually once a month used to drive down to Niagara Falls, and there was a chelation treatment center right over the border in Niagara Falls. So I would head down there, get my shot. It was supposed to be a 3-hour drip, but I can't take that. So they just injected, take about 20 minutes, and then I'd drive back and carry on.
Right. Business as usual after that. That's still insane to be able to come back from that. I mean, that would be something that debilitates someone for a lifetime, much less being able to carry on a pro athletic career afterwards. So that's insane is the nicest way of putting it there. That
I credit the doctor in Calgary that actually he's like, he saw this and so what chelation is, I found out later. Okay. I did a little research, but not much. But it's like injecting millions of magnets into your body, and it draws the heavy metals out of your cells, and you just piss it out.
Awesome.
That's my medical. That's my medical.
Metal than that. Awesome. There's actually quite a few comments already popping up on our feed over here. Some of them have questions, but yeah, some of them address actually things that we'll be jumping to. So we'll address some of those there, but see some of them before we move on to next. So we have a Billy Ramirez on YouTube saying, finally, a Steve Passmore interview. Can't wait.
Oh, wow. He's a shut-in, though. Pretty much, I guess.
And he says he was at that Sharks-Hawks brawl at the Shark Tank, but we actually will get to that.
That was a good one. Brent Myers grabbed me in that one.
Oh, another nice tough guy.
Yeah.
We have TJ off Facebook saying, Steve, huge Blackhawks fan here. Tell me about your time in Chicago. Of course, we'll get to that. Someone asking if you're still shooting straight arrows.
Oh, that's Sean Price. Okay, so quick story about Sean Price. So Sean Price actually owned an outdoor outfitting store in Hamilton, Ontario.
Okay.
And so there's Fergie. So if anybody knows anything about minor league hockey, you're done playing, your practice is over. You're done by noon. Like literally your day is done if you don't have a game.
Oh, nice.
So Scott Ferguson and I were both outdoors guys. So we went and we met up with Sean, and he had an indoor archery range.
Oh, no way. That's awesome.
So he outfit Fergie, and I bought bows and everything like that. And we would sit there, we'd go up there and just shoot our arrows for hours. Right? We had nothing else to do. So we'd sit there, shoot the shit. And Sean was good enough to let us sit there, and we'd sit there in his indoor archery range forever. And we'd put up balloons as targets. And then he had a little car, like one of those RC cars, and you'd put balloons on the end.
Trying to hit the moving target.
Oh yeah, it was a ton of fun. But we spent many hours with Sean at Sean's shop.
That's awesome. That's cool. It's a small world, and people always find each other again on Facebook, especially. It's the great and terrible world we live in with social media. Someone who commented touching on the Dan Kluche fight, we'll definitely pop to that. We have Eric Andrews said, "Awesome to hear, Steve. I remember watching him with the Blackhawks." And someone said, "What's up, Steve Passmore?"
That doesn't count. That's family.
There you go. All right. So moving on to the next. So the latter part of the 96-97 season, you came back to hockey and you led the Hamilton Bulldogs into the Calder Cup final. Even though Hamilton was defeated in 5 games, it was no small feat. As less than a year prior to that, as we just discussed, your career was in jeopardy before it truly began. Now you were showing the Oilers that you meant business, and you essentially led their farm team right to the final there. What was that entire experience like for you, coming back to pro hockey, and how are your teammates responsive to that amazing comeback from essentially the end to the Phoenix resurrection, the new beginning, I would say?
Well, actually, it was really funny that year because they didn't know anything really that was going on in my world, right? You got to remember, this is kind of pre-cell phone, and you're not texting everybody saying what's going on. And so I remember the team was actually in St. John,
okay,
playing the Baby Flames, and I just flew in there to go meet the team because I spent 2 days after when I came back. It's actually, this story might take a little longer.
Oh, that's fine. We got the time.
We got so Edmonton didn't know if I could play, so they sent me to Raleigh, North Carolina, in the East Coast League.
Oh, wow.
So anybody that's looking on my hockey DB, they can see I played 2 games in the East Coast League, and I sport a 6.5 goals against average because I was the shits. I was awful. I hadn't played, right? And they just wanted to see if I could make it through a game. They didn't really care how I played.
Okay.
So I went down there. I had 1 pregame skate. We played that night. I got lit up for 6.
Okay.
Then we went to Charlotte the next night. I got lit up for 7.
Wow.
And then the GM at the time comes in after the game. We're in the dressing room. He's like, "All right, Passy." He's like, "Grab your stuff." He's like, "You got called up to Hamilton." And everybody in the room was like, "What? He's terrible. Like, what do you mean he got called up?" And I remember standing up in front of the boys. I'm like, "You guys have been doing it all wrong. You're trying to play well." I'm like, "Shit the bed. You get called up. It's easy."
I like that.
So they call me up, and I went and met the team in St. John, and it was awesome actually because the team had no idea I was coming. And I showed up, and Scott Ferguson was the first one to see me. And he's just like, what are you doing here? And it was like, "I'm back playing." And from that time on, we got on such a run. They weren't doing well. And I'm not saying it had anything to do with me, but whatever it was, we just got hot. We started having a lot of fun as a team. and we made the playoffs by 2 points that year.
Oh wow!
Like we were the basement dweller.
The last seed, yeah.
Yeah, we made it. We made it by 2 points, and then we rolled through and we got to the final. Every series went to the final game, except the actual final.
Final, right? Yeah.
We won game 7s, game 5s, went to the final. So it was a ton of fun. We had so much fun that year. And coming back from not playing made it a little bit sweeter for me, for sure.
And then that little stint in Carolina, they're just kind of warmed you back into it. Took you back to your time with Victoria.
I think they only gave up 20 shots. Like I was terrible. I couldn't stop a puck. I didn't know what foot was what. I didn't know how to move.
Fair enough.
I figured it out after a while.
True enough. Otherwise, we'd just be talking about your AHL or ECHL career at this point if it didn't work out.
At that point, I couldn't have held an ECHL job.
Well, yeah, there's the CHL below that, or
it was. I'm sure those guys were very surprised in that dressing room when the GM told me I was actually getting called up, not sent down.
Not bad. But again, it worked out in the end. That's all that matters. Details in between are just details.
Just details.
All right. Well, we got a couple more questions. Of course, some of them we'll touch on because they're more relevant to some of the other themes that I have lined up here. But we'll have a personal question, and we'll jump into some tough guy stuff, which is some of my favorites. So we have here Body and Balance Physiotherapy and Wellness Clinic off YouTube wrote, Don Sorensen is wondering if any of the hacky sack hockey in his mom's living room in Grand Forks, I'm guessing.
Grand Forks, baby.
All right. Had any influence in your success?
Well, Don Sorensen, so we grew up together.
Okay.
There's the Grand Forks right there. It's, you know what? It always pissed me off because it always said that my hometown was Thunder Bay. Mm-hmm. All my hockey cards, everything like that, always says Thunder Bay. Right. It pisses me off because all we did was use the hospital in Thunder Bay.
Right. Well, that's because the place of birth. Yeah.
Yeah. And I grew up in Grand Forks, and I tried to get them to change. I'm like, put birthplace as Thunder Bay, get that, but put hometown as Grand Forks, because Grand Forks is a town of like 3,500 people, probably 5,000 now, but so proud to be from there. Mm-hmm. And little known fact, so in Grand Forks, you don't try out for a hockey team. You just happen to have 15 guys that are the same age.
There you go. You go to hockey team.
Right. And you know, like if Bobby decides he's going to quit, you got to go talk him into playing again. So you have enough guys for a team. Mm-hmm. But we actually had a pretty good team. And from that same team, from a town of 3,500, 2 of us made the NHL from that team.
That's crazy odds. Yeah.
Name the other one. So there's the question. Name the other player from that team that made the NHL with me. That's the Facebook thing.
I don't have the Jeopardy theme song on the.
You can't be it. That's bullshit.
No one said nothing.
Not yet. They'll figure it out. Don Sorensen should know, for Christ's sakes.
I hear the crickets a chirping.
All right. Well, there you go. By the end, if somebody doesn't get it,
there we go. Then we got it. Kevin Sawyer.
There you go.
Another good tough guy. I believe you played with Anaheim for a while there.
Absolutely. Yeah. Good man. Good man.
Very nice. Okay. There's another question we'll touch on a little bit later. I think it'll be more appropriate at a later time. A few comments. We'll jump on to the next then. Let's talk about enforcers and fighting, which is some of my favorite stuff that they don't have enough of in the NHL anymore. That's my opinion. So you played with a lot of tough guys and enforcers in both your junior and NHL career. And I have to emphasize a lot, as just like last time, I made a list that just touches on some of the bigger names. So you got Scott Ferguson, Darcy Tucker, Chris Murray, Dennis Bonvie.
Time out. Did you just put Scott Ferguson, Darcy Tucker, and tough guys?
They like their penalty minutes, so I'll put them in there. They didn't mind getting those penalty minutes. I'm working down the list, all right, to the big boys there. So then we got Georges Leroc, Nathan Parrott, Ryan Vandenbush, Bob Probert, Stu Grimson, Ian LaPerriere, Sean Thornton, and Chris Simon. So you had a lot of experience around them. And those are just the ones who made the NHL. This doesn't even include people in the minors or in your juniors. So it's a lot. This is kind of a three-part question. We'll see how
can we do one at a time just so I remember the question?
Oh, absolutely. It could work separately as well. So what is the value of an enforcer to a goalie? So that's the first part.
All right. Well, massive. You know what? We're usually the guys that hang around together because nobody else wants to talk to us.
Okay.
Right? No, I have such huge respect for guys that do that as a living. It's a thankless job. Mm-hmm. Some of them were better players than others. Some of them, your job was to go out and fight. Like that, right. That was it. But you know what? I would say 95% of the tough guys that I played with were salt of the earth guys. Like we're just guys that you love having on your team, and we're usually guys most respected on the team. Guys just loved having them there, and so they were huge. They kept the game in check.
Right. And a lot of times you hear, too, they're always really nice guys off the ice. They just have that role to play, and they obviously made the NHL because they could play that role well. So, yeah, some of those guys definitely wouldn't want to scrap with in real life, that's for sure. So leading then into the next question, who would you say are the top three enforcers that you ever had as teammates?
Top three?
Like if you were to say that, there were three only you could pick where, they'd have your back in a tussle.
Oh, I think any of them would have your back, but I'm going to say toughest man pound for pound was Ryan Vandenbush.
Okay.
Bushy was 5'11", I think 205. Mm-hmm. He was a lefty. He fought every heavyweight out there and never backed down. And I mean, there were sometimes you'd watch the fight and just be like, "Oh, go down, go, don't." And then he'd never stop. Like it was so impressive. He's one of the toughest men I've ever met. And again, super nice guy. But pound for pound, I'll give him the toughest. Mm-hmm. Who else? When it came to junior hockey, Chris Murray was an absolute killer.
Okay.
Not saying he didn't do it at the pro level, but at the junior level, it was just to a whole new level. He was just annihilating people left and right. Mm-hmm. So it's my hat goes off to him. Now you talk. I mean, the Grim Reaper.
Oof, yeah. Los Angeles, you were teammates there.
The Grim Reaper and Proby. I mean, Proby was he's legend, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely.
The Grim Reaper, who went on to become a lawyer afterwards, like like the dumb tough guy thing. Kind of, he forgot about that part. Went on to be a lawyer.
I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Yeah, George LaRocque. He's just a large mammal.
I've met him in person before. Yeah, he's a big dude.
He is a large mammal.
Pretty much done.
And then you mentioned Scott Ferguson, who probably has the weakest muffin lefts ever.
There you go.
He used to start off throwing left-handed, and he would be like he was throwing chocolate chip muffins. And he'll even admit that.
All right, interesting. We'll tie in actually before we get to the third part of that question. We'll tie in with one of the questions someone asked on the board here. I feel it's appropriate given we're talking about Scott Ferguson, and we had a discussion about this before. And well, we're drinking beer. We said shit in other words like that, so we're already established that we can go all over the board with the questions. So
we weren't supposed to say shit. Oh, good. Okay.
I don't care. So we have a question here. This is the question I asked you yesterday. We have Edmonton Oilers mask. This is the one you wore with Hamilton and the Oilers in your rookie year there, the whole season. You believe you changed the cage out from the silver to the white. But Bill Allison here asks, what does the name on the back of your Oilers helmet mean? So on the back it says Schmear. Schmear.
Schmear.
Yes.
Since it's no longer a family show anyway, that nickname came to me from Scott Ferguson, who we lived together our last year in Kamloops, with our billet Donna. Mm-hmm. And then we went on to play the next 4 years together, pro in the minors, slugging it out. And it's from Papsmeer. That's the, he used to call me Schmear.
It's fantastic.
I don't know why he was the only one that did it.
Mm-hmm.
And just so as a joke, I put that on my helmet.
Well, it's a good thing I asked, because as I mentioned to you when I asked a couple days ago there, like for the longest time, I thought it was like you had like some German ancestry and it meant something to you, but this is a better story. All right, so we'll jump back to that enforcer question there, because you had such a long NHL career, lots of times on the roster, lots of enforcers on your teams. What is the very best hockey fight that you ever personally witnessed during your career?
Ryan Vandenbush and Kyle Frederick.
I looked that one up. Yes.
Was that not sick?
It just went on, and no one gave in. They were just taking hits left and right. Like it was.
But if you listen to the, like, I was there, and all you heard was just like face to fist. It was impressive. The two, they never stopped. And I think Kyle Frederick he's 6'5", 6'6".
Mm-hmm.
I think somebody's going to look it up, and I'm probably going to be wrong. But and like I said, and Bushy's 5'11", but it was just. And I remember the highlights that night, and I remember the ESPN slowdown because we're down the States, and it's got Bushy's hitting them, and they actually have an arrow to Kyle's tooth flying out of his mouth, and they're like, they slowed it down, they circled and got the arrow, and it was awesome. But that was probably the sickest fight I've seen.
Yeah, it was definitely something else. Like I said, I watched that video. Like it's stuff you don't see in the NHL at all nowadays. Especially, I mean, they're especially trying to phase out enforcers and fighting. Different league than what it was at the time. That's a story for another day.
Yeah,
Frederick had such a short career, but yeah, he definitely established himself with his very, very short time. Like I think he only played 21 games one year and like 20 games another, and then just a handful. So that was it for him. But
that was it.
He made his impact for sure. So we talked about the other tough guys. Now we're going to jump into the tough guy I'm talking with right now, the enforcer goalie, Steve Passmore.
No, not tough. Willing. I think those are two totally different things. I was always willing to go.
It's a part of it as well as the psychology of a good fight. Again, I'm also a former world champion, world runner-up, and third place martial artist. So I understand the fight mentality. So we were talking about enforcers, the other guys. Now we're talking about you. You weren't afraid to throw down. In fact, you saw a goalie fight 3 times in the NHL. Once with Garth Snow, that was in the 1998 preseason. Once with Steve Shields in the 99 season. And then once with Dan Kluche, that was in March 3rd, 2000, I believe. So for anyone who hasn't seen them, we're going to bring them up on screen here and then have a little discussion about them, because I like a good goalie fight. So we'll start off number 1 here, our tussle with Garth Snow.
Awesome. Watch me get my ass handed to me.
They're just struggling to get that right hand free.
He's a big dude, man.
He is. Snow is a big dude, and yeah, you can't go body shots on him with the giant chest protector.
No. That was just a bad idea.
So the first part of it is nice. You got a nice right cross at him, but and it looks good.
I know, but so the funny part about that is in preseason. Mm-hmm. And so normally when I've got my regular jersey on, because I'm so short, mm-hmm. they cut my jersey sleeves down. And so my jersey sleeves would be really wide. Okay. And so when I was getting in fights, I could just shake my arm out and I'd be out of it and I could throw. Okay. So what happened here was we decided to meet at center ice. And if you go back to where we're going, where we first meet, mm-hmm. I actually went to shake out of my sleeve and I mm-hmm. chicken winged myself. I literally caught my arm in the sleeve because preseason and mm-hmm. they hadn't customized my jersey yet.
Oh, that makes sense then. Okay, I get it.
I'm backing up because I'm thinking I need every advantage against this big dude. And I'm backing up like, oh, give me a sec.
What led to the fight to begin with?
Beating me.
What led to the fight to begin with?
I was having a really shitty game.
Okay.
And I knew it's preseason, so if you get in one fight, you're out. So
Okay.
I'd already let in 3 goals, I think, and I'm like, I'm out. I want out, and I knew they weren't going to pull me.
Style, at least.
I knew they weren't going to pull me, so I challenged him, and he said, "Sure."
Oh, okay, interesting, and especially interesting the Nordiques connection you two had there as well.
Yeah. So he would have beat me. It didn't matter what jersey I had on. He would have beat the shit out of me. So
there you go. That jersey you were wearing in that, this is just an off question. Is that the same one you used in your later call up for your first win in that I traded back?
You mean the one you gave me?
Yes.
I was just giving you props there. That's all.
Oh, okay.
No. I don't know if that's the same jersey or not, but
I know the Oilers, a lot of teams were a lot more, I'm not going to say cheap, but they didn't have like 9 sets per game like some teams do nowadays, where they would have recycled preseason sweaters, especially if they assumed someone was in. Because I remember that jersey when I had it in my collection at one point. There was some like interesting tears on the stitching on one of the arms where it looked like start to come loose, which I was wondering if it was in a fight, and then it kind of clued it in when I saw this one for the first time. So that's why
they actually hadn't customized it before this, but I mean, Edmonton was cheap. Edmonton, if you broke a stick, so think of this: you're in the NHL. If you broke a stick, like in practice or whatever, and you wanted a new stick, you actually had to take your broken one back to the trainer to prove that you'd broken it, not given it away to a fan or something, before they'd give you another new stick.
Interesting. So yeah, that was your battle with Garth Snow, and now we'll jump to round number 2. This is your one with Steve Shields. We did our best to kind of cut and paste and get the other action out of it, and just focus on the little bit you guys had there. So bring that up.
All right.
So you're sort of at the bench there, grappling a bit.
Yeah, I got to find smaller people to fight, I think. So that was the guy that I'd been, so nobody saw this, but right there, that's Doug Smolik, who's fighting Kryaluk. So he was the guy that I had been paired, because it was a line brawl.
Right.
So I paired off with Kryaluk. I'm like, oh, there's a Russian. I'll grab him. I might have a chance. And it was funny because I got my arm free and I'm like, dude, are we going to do that? Like, you want to go? Are we going to go? Are we going to throw him? And he's looking at me. He's laughing. He's like, nope. Then I see the way he handled Z there. And I'm like, that was probably a good idea. I didn't actually throw him with him. That probably wasn't going to end well for me either.
And never mess with the quiet people who don't want to fight.
No, and the little smile, I'm like, that's probably not going to end well.
Yeah, you definitely don't see line brawls like that anymore.
No, see, little size difference there.
Just a little bit.
A little bit, yeah. I might have to headbutt him in.
Yeah. So that one didn't seem as intense, but what you guys were just taking part in the sort of line brawl. I don't feel this one is as intense.
No, we got broken up. I had Kryaluk, and then Brent Myers when he was getting let off the ice, he actually gave me a shot. And then the linesman came in, and then it all started up again, and I grabbed Steve Shields, and thankfully I was already exhausted from sitting with Kryaluk the whole time, and I'll blame it on that, whatever.
There you go, yeah. And then someone actually mentioned, look at the hair on that in that video, and yeah, the frosted tips going for the.
It's the same. It hasn't changed.
It's still there.
Maybe a little different.
Good. On to round number 3. This one it has the most action out of all of them, and a couple of things that are questionable watching it, but get a good little play-by-play on this one. So this is round number 3 with Dan Kluche, Tampa Bay Lightning. Chicago Blackhawks, another good line brawl there. And they're freed up that right sleeve, eh?
Yeah, I told you.
Yep.
Once I freed the right sleeve up, then I could get hit by him at any time he wanted.
Yes, we'll just pause it over here. So what led to that fight to begin with? Because there seemed to be a lot more something behind it versus the Garth Snow one and the Steve Shields one, where it just seemed to be something that happened.
So he and I played against each other in the minors, and there was a bit of a scrum going on, and there was a bit of a brawl, and I actually skated all the way down the ice because he was going after one of our players. We were shorthanded, so I skated all the way down the ice to fight him because I heard he was tough, and I'm like, oh, he won't be afraid at least.
Mm-hmm.
And he actually sicked the linesman on me and didn't want to fight. So then in this game, we were actually winning 3-1. He wasn't doing too well. And there actually wasn't another fight going on. He just shook his guts and he's like, you want to go? I'm like, sure, game on, let's go. And so we were the only fight going on. We met at center ice and went at it. And after you'll see, he suckers me. And I actually, they're kicking me out. And at the end, I end up just putting my gloves back on and go finish the game.
Right. And we'll actually bring that up here right away. And that's kind of the questionable move there, but it's coming up. So you guys are tied up there. And then, Kluche is going to... Actually, before that, you guys do have a bit of an exchange of words. Do you remember anything of that at all? So
I told him exactly that. I told him he was such a pussy. I thought he was tough.
Right. And then, just the shot right there.
I know. That's me laughing at him.
Yeah. So, that those are your three goaltending battles in the actual fight circuit there.
Yeah, see, when I was in Victoria that couple years there, I think the 1 year, I think I had 92 penalty minutes. I had 5 fighting majors the 1 year. We were terrible, though. Like, the puck got in our way. We could fight, and that was it.
Oh, it's good skills to have. Again, not enough people have that grit anymore. So, I'm going to move on in your career now. We're going to February of 1999. So, that was the moment you've been finally waiting for. You were recalled by the Oilers, and you started your first career NHL game on February 24th against Anaheim and Dominic Roussel, who, interestingly enough, ended his career with the Oilers. But that's another story. The game saw you stop 22 of 24 shots. I believe it was a 2-1 loss, I believe. I imagine that NHL recall in your debut was an overwhelming experience, especially given the uncertainty of your future just a few years prior. How did you find out you were getting the start? This is a few-part question again. I like my few-part questions, so we'll start with the first one. How did you find out you were getting that start?
Well, actually, it was in pregame skate. I had no clue. And I was, and I was the third goalie that got called up because it was Bob Asenza and Mikhail Stalenkov. Wow.
Right.
There you go.
Mikhail, yeah.
and I was the third goalie. So it's pregame skate. So I'm sitting out there taking extra shots because that's your job, right? Mm-hmm. You're the target. Sit there and take shots. And I'm sitting there taking extra shots, and I remember one of the coaches comes up and he's like, "Do you normally take this many shots?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm the third goalie. Like I'll be the last guy off the ice. This is what I'm supposed to do." He's like, "Oh shit, I think you're starting tonight."
Nice.
And I was like, "I'm done. I'm out." And I skated off he said I was done. I'm like, I don't want any more shots. And that was my first start. And none of my, normally you get your family in there for the first one and everything. And I actually only got time. One of my buddies, I called him, Sean Kelso is his name. He's actually the media guy for the Flames now.
Oh, no way.
But I called him and I'm like, dude, getting my first start tonight. And he's like, gotta book a flight. And he actually flew from Vancouver to Edmonton, and he was the only one in the stands that night.
Oh, that's awesome. But yeah, it was such short notice, especially when you just thought you were the number 3 there.
Oh yeah, shit. I didn't even think I was dressing, never mind playing.
Fair enough. But I mean, it was a good start. I think the next game was like just a few days later. You played against, I want to say Carolina, because Arturs Urbe. I think it was like a 2-2 tie was the score of that one. And then can't remember if it was the third or fourth game you got your first win after that.
I think I think it was when we went to Buffalo was my first win. Yeah, that's what Slats was being a dick then too, because I hadn't signed yet. I was unrestricted at the end of the year.
Okay.
And after pregame skate that day, Slats pulls me in. He pulls me into this little room in the dressing room. And he's like, "We got to get you signed." I'm like, yeah, call my agent. Like, I don't, whatever. And he's like, "Oh, I'm not going to do this. You got to sign. I'm not going to do." I'm like, "Dude, I'm starting tonight. And I don't feel real comfortable in this league to start with."
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, "Just call my agent." And I'm like, "Oh, I was so nervous anyway." And then he's talking contract, and I'm like, "Nope, can't think about that."
Worry you don't need, and it's also it's just saying it's above your pay grade. That's for someone else to decide.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't care.
You instead, yeah.
I remember I literally wrote down my agent's number on a piece of paper for him. In case you don't know this guy, call him.
That's the way to do it. You don't need that extra shit on your mind.
No, not at all.
Continuing still on that same page with that NHL debut. So when you knew you were getting the start, you were in the dressing room ready for puck drop. Did any of your teammates give you any good encouragement? And we'll throw the second part of this one as well as part of the first one. Joey Moss, rest in peace. Of course, we were talking about in the Mike Morrison episode, he likes to give people a little hard time and has a certain sense of humor about him. And he likes to, he's a big part of the team locker room.
He used to let you know, the rookie, when you were a rookie, he let you know that he was way above you on the food chain. For sure. But yeah, my first game, sitting there in the dressing room, might have been a little bit nervous, and I remember I'm tying my skates and just honestly because I didn't want to look around, because even when you looked around, it was like, "Oh shit, you're really here. Like this is happening. Oh, and you're starting. Okay." So I was tying my skates, and I remember Dougie Waite, he was off to my left on the side wall. And Waiter sits there and he's like, "Pass." He's like, I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Is this your first game ever?" I'm like, yeah, it is. He's like, "Oh," he goes, "Whatever you do, don't shit the bed tonight."
No pressure.
And I was just like, "Okay, I'll try not to." And I continued tying my skates, and that's all I could think about was, yeah, don't shit the bed. Don't shit the bed. And it was so funny. He came up to me after the game, and he was just like, "Oh, you did great." And he's like, "I'm really sorry." He goes, "A vet, his first game, a vet did that to him." And he said it just kind of made him, took his mind off. He goes, "I've done it to every rookie since." So it was kind of the welcome to the league. You're here.
Doug Waite's definitely a good player to get it from. I mean, he was the leader of that team at that era. He was the last player to have 100 points a season with the Oilers until McDavid and Draisaitl managed to do it a few times since. But absolutely. Yeah. All right. What was your favorite memory of that day?
My favorite.
It must have been a million things going through your head at the time, and
you know what? It was funny because I remember talking to I think it was Bob Essenza, and we were talking about, he's like, guys to watch. He's like, watch out for, he's like, "Oh, Korea does this, and he'll drag the puck and he'll try and shoot between the D-man's legs." And he's like, "Watch Solani for this." And, and it's like, "Oh yeah, I've heard of these two guys. I've heard they're all right." And of course, those are the two guys that scored on me.
Right.
So Solani and Korea were my first two guys that scored on me. I think I can sleep at night knowing that.
Exactly. Not bad names there. I mean,
not bad.
Yeah.
I think they scored on a few other goalies too.
One or two, maybe, because they were lucky.
Yeah.
So let's see. Any other questions we have on the side? There's someone asking who is your agent?
Art Breeze. Art Shoot the Breeze.
There's another question.
His favorite line of all time ever. He would tell everyone it. He'd be like, Pass, if I had an NHL team, you'd be on it. That's it. Oh, God, I think he told every one of his players that. He was a great man. Loved him to death. He was my agent since the time I was 15.
Oh, so you're just pretty much like a second father to you then?
Oh, yeah, just a good dude.
That's awesome. A couple other questions we'll touch on a little bit later on. I think they fit in later at the show here. But next question. So the following season, after you only played 6 games with the Oilers, you were traded to the Chicago Blackhawks, where you had the chance to be the full-time NHL. Sorry?
I signed.
You signed?
I was an unrestricted free agent.
Okay, so yeah, the Oilers then didn't even bother or put much effort into re-signing you. So then
they tried. I turned them down.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess, wanted a better chance somewhere else, I think, and you definitely got it. I mean, you had the chance to be a full-time NHLer now as the backup to Jocelyn Thibault, and you also had stretches in there where you were the starter for the team as well. You had that role over the course of 5 seasons. This leads to our questions, of course. What was it like playing with Jocelyn Thibault for so many years?
It was great. He and I got along really well. I actually hung out with all the Frenchies in Chicago. We all lived in the same, in the same little suburb and stuff like that. But he was a good teammate. He was my biggest cheerleader when I played. He actually legitimately wanted me to do well. And I think part of that came from he didn't ever think I was a threat to his job. It's like, we'll let him play for a bit, and I hope you do really well. I'll see you later. And but he was a good teammate to have. He was always there to cheer me on.
Okay, and it's interesting you mentioned about him not being scared of you threatening his job. It leads into the next part of this question here is obviously since you have that backup role for the majority of your time there, that means there's lots of young, hungry goalies nipping at the heels, wanting to take your spot. Did you do anything extra to make sure that no hungry young goalies could overtake you and then have you go back through the minors again?
Well, I mean, there was, I remember the one, I played an entire season on painkillers. I blew my knee out, one game, and I had a 2nd degree MCL tear. Oof. And I'm like, nope, not going to tell anybody because I can't afford to be out for 4 weeks. Because by the time when you scratch and claw your way to get there, you want to make sure there's claw marks on the door when you leave, right? Like you're not going to make it easy for anybody. So I literally every day I'd show up and take my pills and take my painkillers and go out there. And I'd even take painkillers before games that I wasn't playing, just in case I had to go in. And I remember one game I had to go in. I don't remember whether T got hurt or whether he was just shitting the bed. But I remember the trainer coming down. He's like, might want to take these.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, they weren't, it wasn't Oxy or anything like that. But they were painkillers to just kind of get you through. And it was one of those things, especially back in the day, that's just what you did. You didn't want to lose your job, so you'll do whatever that you have to keep it.
Oh, absolutely. I absolutely get that. I mean, especially how hard you have to fight to make your way into the NHL, given, like we've talked about multiple times throughout here, that the potential is there for you to lose your career before it really began. So you got it now. You didn't want to lose it. It makes sense.
I wasn't giving it up easy, for sure.
Exactly. Not without a fight.
No.
And you had at least 3 actual fights along the way. And MCL injury is no joke. I've been through one of those as well. And yeah,
I've been through 5 of them now. So
it's insane. Since you played so long with Thibault, I'm curious who your favorite goaltending partner of all time was and why.
Wow. Favorite goalie partner of all time. Oh, geez. You know what? Rod Branch in Kamloops, when he was my backup in Kamloops, he was awesome. He's a different cat for sure. Like he just a different bird, but great guy. And he carried us because I blew my knee out once in the season we won the Memorial Cup. I actually blew my knee out in the middle of that season.
Jeez.
And he stepped in and played phenomenally and got us, kept us up in the standings where we could go on and win it. So he was a huge part of it there. I'd say Tebow was probably one of my favorites.
Oh yeah, I imagined, like, I know I had to bring that question up because whenever there's tension between goalies in a dressing room, they don't last 5 seasons together as a tandem because someone would have to go. But I mean, you got traded away to LA in the start of 001, but then you went right back to Chicago. So it's really like you never left like the family. So it's interesting.
Well, it's funny though, because I got traded to LA because if you remember, that was the year of the expansion draft. And both
Atlanta and those guys, yeah.
Both teams, Minnesota and
Columbus.
Thank you. Yeah. and so both teams had told Chicago that if they left me exposed, they were going to take me.
Okay.
So Chicago and LA wanted to keep Facette and Storr. So if you're going to protect 2 goalies, you needed one that had enough experience to expose.
Okay.
So Chicago's idea was go hide me in LA. And then the deal was hide me in LA. Once the expansion draft goes through, ship me back to Chicago.
Interesting.
Basically just a paper trade.
Huh.
But
okay.
So then LA made a deal with, I think, Minnesota that if they didn't take me, they would give them Jason Podolin. So they took Jason Podolin, which meant they lost their player, which means they couldn't take me. But then before I got traded back to Chicago, Stéphane Fissé got hurt. And so now LA is like, oh, wait a minute, we actually need him now. So they didn't trade me back until he actually came back and was healthy again. So that's why I was in LA for 4 months instead of going back right away.
They also acquired Felix Potvin like 13 days before you got traded back. So I guess they wanted that insurance, knowing that you were gonna head back to the Blackhawks.
Absolutely.
Interesting. It's definitely a different story than because I obviously have to do my research as well in doing one of these shows, and one of the websites on there was saying that you wanted to be a starter, so the team said, oh, you can start in Los Angeles, and that was the story behind it. So this is it's the beauty of Wikipedia. Someone can just write any shit they want on there. But
yeah, maybe I wrote in there I wanted to be a starter. The problem was I wasn't good enough.
I'm not commenting on that. I can't comment. I never played there. No, I did nothing in hockey myself. So well, since we're already on the topic of goaltending partner again, and obviously Jamie Storr was your partner in Los Angeles, and you mentioned he had some odd tendencies. We had a comment from earlier in the video I'll bring back up. So since you mentioned Jamie Storr, who else was a weird goalie partner?
Storzy was the weirdest, and he had a very different personality. Like I remember so at one point in LA, I actually got on a streak, and I think I started 6 games in a row, which for a backup starting 6 games in a row is unheard of. And we're sitting side by side in the stalls, like our stalls were side by side. And remember after practice, he turns to me, he's like, oh, this is bullshit. He's like, I'm getting screwed in LA. He's like, they want me to be the starter, but now they won't play me. And he's like, this is ridiculous. I can't believe I'm not starting. And I remember sitting there kind of looking on, you're complaining to the guy that's playing, right? Like sympathy's probably not going to be there. But it was, again, just that different. He had a different mentality. It was a different cat for sure.
Right.
And then the other weird was Tim Thomas.
Okay, yeah. Because he was drafted by the Nordiques as well originally.
He was my backup in Hamilton.
Okay, I didn't know that. That's interesting.
And I will say he is one of only 2 people that I've ever played with that I can say I don't like.
Oh, no way.
No, like as a person, like just as an actual human being. He's one of the two people I've ever played with I don't like. He was an arrogant prick, and he went on to have a hell of a career. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, absolutely.
Don't get me wrong. I'll give him props on that. But I remember actually threatening to beat the shit out of him off the ice because of the way he treated our trainers.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. So but that would probably be the other weird one, would be Tim Thomas.
Interesting.
I know it's not the reason you guys probably figured, but
no, but still interesting. Never I didn't expect a story about Tim Thomas out of this, because I didn't even clue in that you played together there outside of maybe the Nordiques training camp. But
no, he was my backup in Hamilton.
Wow. I'd like to explore that further for sure, but I don't think I want to ruffle any feathers on that anymore. So
I'm not gonna ruffle my feathers.
Oh, not your feathers, but I don't have the money for lawyers.
Fair enough.
All right, so we'll actually go to the Los Angeles Kings season there. What would you say was different playing in Los Angeles versus Chicago, and how was it playing with guys like Luc Robitaille and Ziggy Palffy and the Grim Reaper himself?
You know what? It was a really weird dynamic in LA. As far as I was in the hotel, so we were hotel trash. Myself and Steve Thomas we were hotel trash.
Okay.
And they had a very cliquey team. Mm-hmm. But the guys individually were unbelievable. The Grim Reaper was amazing. I remember I'm living in the hotel, and he comes to me one day in the dressing room. He's like, "Are you still in hotel pass?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Come live with me and my family." He's like, "You can't live in a hotel. Come live with me." But he's got 4 kids. I'm like, I don't really know. I'll stay in the hotel. I appreciate it. But that shows like what a great guy he was. He's willing to take in some stray from the hotel and let him come live with his family just because he knows that it's not the most glamorous life. But those guys, Ziggy Palffy was awesome. Nelson Emerson, Luc Robitaille. I remember Luc Robitaille, I had to call Lucky. I'm like, "Hey, it's my birthday. I'd like to go to Morton's in Hollywood for my birthday dinner." And I actually, there you go. That's what a big star you are as an LA King. I actually had to get Luc Robitaille to get me reservation into Morton's so we could have dinner.
Well, it pays to know the right people still.
Well, and Rob Blake, Rob Blake was such a great leader. Funny story. So remember he had a Super Bowl party.
Okay.
And so we're going to he tells me where he lives down on the strip in Redondo Beach. And I apparently thought I knew where he was. So went down there, walk into this house, knock on the door. Nobody answers. Like, okay, everybody's outside, whatever. Walk in, start walking into this house and looking down, and I'm looking at everything. It's like, wow, right on the strip. So nice. Start heading towards the back, and this guy comes down the hallway, and he's like, "Hey," I'm like, "Hey, how you doing?" He's like, "Everybody's out back." I'm like, "Okay." Didn't recognize the guy, and I start looking at all the pictures on the wall. I'm like, "Oh shit, this isn't the right house." We walked into his neighbor's house.
Oh no.
Yeah, I actually had to go call him. I'm like, "Where are you?" And he's like, "I'm 2 houses down." I'm like, "Tell your neighbor I'm really sorry."
Take part in 2 parties that day, then.
Oh yeah.
Take advantage, get a few beers, have some nachos, bam.
Yeah, it was pretty good.
That's awesome. So now we're gonna jump back to your time back with Chicago now after they traded you, and then we're gonna jump ahead a season. So okay. 2002, for the first time since 1997, the Chicago Blackhawks made it into the playoffs and faced the St. Louis Blues in round 1. So after a close 2-1 victory in game 1, Chicago struggled from there to score goals, that is. You guys were shut out in 3 straight games afterwards. In both games 4 and 5 of that series, you were chosen as the starter over Jocelyn Thibault. You surrendered only 1 goal in game 4, and yet the team lost 1-0. This is a multi-part question again, because there's so much to talk about with something like this. But how does a team deal with such a difficult situation of not being able to score goals in 3 straight games, especially?
Well, apparently we didn't deal very well with it because we didn't score any.
Interesting
answer. We didn't find the answer. It was one of those ones. You know what? We couldn't have fallen out of a boat and hit water. Like it didn't matter. Whatever happened, it was going off the bar. It was going off the back of his ass. It was like Johnson had 3 shutouts in a row. And I'll be honest, he didn't play that well. Like, I know that sounds really weird, but it's not like you looked at this kid and went, okay. Well, yeah. It wasn't that way at all. It just couldn't beat him. And it would go through his legs and then hit the toe of his skate, hit the post, and go out. It was just no puck luck at all.
Interesting. So it was essentially just he didn't steal the games, but just you guys just didn't have any of the breaks going for you.
Yeah, and I don't mean to take I mean, the man got 3 shutouts in a row, which I've never done or seen before. And
the best goalie fight in NHL history, in my opinion.
We obviously didn't solve the riddle.
Right. How frustrating is it though, as a goalie, where you essentially don't make any mistakes during the course of the game, and still you lose 1-0? Like I'd be frustrated.
Well, it's funny actually, because Mel and I, so my girlfriend Melissa and I were sitting there. I don't know why I had YouTube on, but I was flipping through, and for some reason that game came up. You lose 1-0, so I sat there. I'm like, oh, screw this! I'm watching the entire game, and I watched it. And yeah, the only goal was we were going to clear the zone. It bounced back in. The guy got a lucky shot. Quick one, beat me. But that's the only goal you let in, and you lose your first start in the playoffs. I was like, you kind of feel like you got screwed.
There's no other way to put it, for sure.
And again, I watched that entire game again, and he didn't stand on his head. We just didn't beat him.
So in the locker room, though, what kinds of things did you guys say to try and get the team's shit back together, essentially?
Oh, we were throwing sticks in the garbage cans to try and get garbage goals. Like it was, oh my God, all the stupid stuff you could think of, we were trying, and it just didn't work. It was just, everyone's like, oh, the usual cliches. Oh, we got to get pucks to the net. We got to get traffic. Nothing worked.
I mean, it's not like Chicago didn't have good goal scorers either at the time. And you had Steve Sullivan in the team. I can't remember if Tyler Arneson was there yet at that point.
No, we had Sully, we had Amante, we had Daze,
right.
Jamroff.
These are guys that could put up points.
Nylander, we had boys that could score.
And luckily, though, at least St. Louis didn't go on to win. Detroit, of course, ended up beating them in 5 games. I think shut them out twice in that series. And then, of course, Detroit went on to win the Cup that year in 5 against Carolina. So now we're going to jump even further ahead in time. It's like time travel in interview format here. So in 2004, you suffered a late season injury, which caused you to miss 24 games. And with Thibault also nursing injuries from that season, that combination of events allowed Craig Anderson, Michael Layton, and to a lesser extent, Adam Monroe jump in to essentially take over Chicago's goaltending positions. This was evidenced in 05-06 when neither you nor Thibault were a part of that organization anymore. In fact, he ended up getting acquired by the Phoenix Coyotes. A lot of people don't know that Mr. Passmore, he was a member of the Phoenix Coyotes, even dressed as a backup on October of 2006 against Dallas, I believe that game was. Early on in the season, you left the Coyotes organization. That included the San Antonio Rampage, I believe is their minor affiliate at the time, to go to Europe to play in Jokerit, Finland. This is an interesting story in my mind because I'd heard so many variations as to what transpired for why you left the Coyotes organization. So I'm curious what the real reason was for leaving the Coyotes versus, random Wikipedia articles or
Well, you tell me what you heard first.
So what I've heard, one of the variations I heard is you didn't agree with management, and then you wanted to have a better role on the NHL team, and then you weren't happy about being in San Antonio, so you essentially just didn't report to the team and went to sign with a team in Europe. That's the main one I'd heard. That kind of was the one I trust. But
yeah, well, they're full of shit.
I prefer real stories.
What really happened was I was going to go back to Europe after. So the lockout, I played in Germany.
Yes.
Right. And I was going to go back to Europe. I came back and I couldn't really find a good job in the NHL or NHL teams. So I was going to go back to Europe. I was okay with that. And then Phoenix called and they said, you know what? We want you to be our number 3 guy. Like, we want you to be our insurance guy. So if anybody gets hurt, you know we've got a guy that can not just fill a jersey, but, a guy that's experienced, can play, not going to get nervous. We don't have to worry about him. Something happens, you come up. Mm-hmm. And so I signed under I said, okay, but I'm like, here's the deal. It's a 2-way contract. I said, but and at that time, the CBA had changed so that you could only sign veteran guys in the minors to a certain amount.
Okay.
Because there was a waiver thing. And so they were going to have to make my minor league salary not as much as I would have made in Europe.
Okay.
That way.
Mm-hmm.
So I said to them, I said, okay, I'll sign for that. And I don't mind that role. But if something goes side, somebody gets hurt, anything like that, I'm the one that gets called up because I got to supplement my income.
Right.
Right. And so that was the deal. So I showed up to training camp. I signed the deal, showed up to training camp. Things went fine. I played well in training camp. Everything's good. And so then they had this young kid, David Lenovo was his name. And he was actually playing pretty well. I'll give him that. And they're like, well, so I remember I went into a meeting with Mr. Gretzky. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you've heard of him. His name's Wayne.
Who is that now?
DBM. He actually had a decent career, but he was the coach at the time.
Right.
So Gretz calls me in and he's like, okay, Pass. He's like, listen, so we're gonna send you down just for a week. And he goes, go down. We want to take a look at this Lenovo kid. Go down for a week and then we'll call you right back up. And I look at him like, you've never been through this before. I'm like, dude, Gretz, I understand it's way easier to send a guy down than call him up. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, this is bullshit. You're sending me down there and you're going to bury me. Mm-hmm. No, we're going to call you right back up. I'm like, yep, you've never been through this. I'm pretty sure you never got sent down. So, so I did. I got sent down, but at the time I had a new kid.
Okay.
Not a new kid. I had my only kid.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But I had a new baby son.
Yes.
And so I get sent down to San Antonio and they're sitting there and I'm like, okay, what's the deal? So for those of you that don't know hockey, when you get sent down, when they tell you to get a place, it means move your family in. Mm-hmm. Right. So I've got a young son. I just want to be with my family. Right. Wherever it is, if it's in the show, great. If it's in the minors, great. Just tell me what to do. But I'm sick of living in a hotel. I'm too fat and old to live in a hotel. Right. So I kept asking them every day. I'm like, guys, what are you doing? Like, tell me to get a place. Oh, just hold on. Well, a week turned into 10 days, turns into 2 weeks, turns into a month. And I'm still sitting there and I've got a kid that's under the age of 1 at home that I want to be around. Right. And so I'm actually, so now I moved out of the hotel. I bunk in with a guy again, like we're 20 again. I'm in my 30s and he lets me stay at his apartment and everything like this. And I keep asking him like, what's going on? And so then I end up getting an offer from Finland to go play in Helsinki. Mm-hmm. And I went to Phoenix and I'm like, guys, you guys shit the like you guys did not hold up your end of the bargain. I've held up mine. You didn't hold up yours. I'm like, will you give me, the blessing to go, and can I go? And they're like, yeah, fair enough. We kind of screwed you. So I went and signed in.
Consolation though, because they knew they messed up still, and
but it's hockey. It's hockey. It is what it is. You're a piece of meat, and that's it. So they at least, I'll give them that. They owned up to their side, and they're like, yeah, we did kind of screw you. And so I went to Finland for the year. Oh, yeah.
That's nice. And you also got to play with a couple of former NHL guys as well. Like I know one of your goaltending partners was Tom Askey over there, and he was an Anaheim Mighty Duck for a brief period there as well. A lot of people don't know that, but
and a hell of a guitar player.
Oh, I didn't know that. It's awesome.
Oh, so that's what he does now. He's a musician.
Oh, it's interesting.
Mm-hmm. Huh. Yeah. Probably a better musician than he was a goalie.
I can't remember how many games he played. It wasn't very many in the NHL, maybe 4 or so, but that's I don't hold me to it. I can't remember.
But he can play a mean guitar.
Oh, that's awesome. I should look up some of his stuff. It's on YouTube, I'm guessing.
I don't know. Probably.
Everything's on YouTube now, except what you're looking for. That one you can never find. So someone did ask, did you get along with Gretzky in Phoenix, as brief as it was?
So Wayne Gretzky is the worst coach ever to coach in the NHL.
No.
Bar none.
Mm-hmm.
But I say that with all due respect.
Why is that, though?
Because you can't, when you're as good as he is at hockey, you can't teach. Like, you don't, he'd sit there and he'd be doing a drill or whatever, pointing out a drill, and he'd look at the guys and he's like, okay, so you go over here, and the fourth line guys looking at him going, well, why do I go over there? And Gretz is looking at him like, well, because the puck's going to go there. Fourth line's got line guys going, well, why is the puck going to go there? Gretz can't understand. He's looking at the game, and he's 10 steps ahead of the game at all times.
Interesting.
So he's looking at the guy going, well, how do you not know that the puck's going to go there? And so you can't, they say those who can't teach do, or
can't
those
do teach. Yeah.
Is. And that's exactly what it was. He was so, you can't teach that. Like what he had and his hockey knowledge, you can't teach. So I think that was the tough part he had, is that what happened in his brain and the way he sees the game, you can't just blurt that out or throw that up on a board, right? You can't do that. He just looks at the guys like they're idiots going, the puck's going to go right there. And everybody else is going, nope, didn't know that.
Wow.
That's right. That's what I say. Like, he was the worst coach I think I've ever had. I still think the best coaches are backup goalies, seventh defensemen, and like the fourth line player, because they had to
observe the game and then see it from start to end for a long period. Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Well, they didn't have the talent. Do you know what I mean? Like, they didn't have the God-given talent, or whatever you call it. They had to learn the game so much better, and because they had to earn it. Whereas, not that the other people didn't earn it, but they had to work harder to get there. And so they were a student of the game. They understood the game better.
That makes sense. I mean, you see the results. Like, superstar players don't have a tendency of being successful coaches. I mean, there's certain exceptions.
Many of them.
Daryl Sutter, who is one of the Sutters, the one that played on Chicago back in the day. Like, that one turned out to be pretty good. Doug Wilson was pretty good, but otherwise, not really any superstar guys, more gritty guys. Guy Carbonneau.
Usually it's your fourth liner or your sixth defenseman. Yeah.
Yeah. And then was Grant Fuhr the goalie coach at the time as well over there?
Where?
Phoenix. Or was that in the next season?
We had a goalie coach. We had a goalie coach in Chicago, and that was Tretiak.
Oh, yeah. He was around the team for a while there. Yeah. I remember Doug Keenan brought him in, and then he coached Ed Belfour and young Dominic Hasek, and or younger Dominic Hasek. I don't think he was ever young.
No.
I didn't realize Tretiak stayed that long with the team, though. That's pretty interesting too.
Yep. We had him for 5 years.
I've got to ask about him because, I mean, Tretiak is a legend, probably the best player to never get a chance to play in the NHL. How was Tretiak as a coach, and was he good with you guys or very so? Oh, no.
Oh, God, he was terrible. Oh, he didn't know anything about goaltending. The era difference was so big.
Oh, okay, I see.
There was nothing. I remember sitting there talking to him the one time we were talking about. So we did the same. Like he would do the same 2 drills. He would just sit on his stick like this and watch the goalies, and he, they probably paid him $150,000 a year to just sit there and do nothing. And he would sit there, and I remember we were talking. He's like, oh, yo, Thibault, okay. Thibault okay goalie, a bad rebound, but Thibault okay. And then he looks at me and goes, you bad goalie.
Oh, no.
I'm like, what? I'm like, dude, I'm starting tonight.
That's the Soviet bluntness. I like that.
He's like, you bad goalie. I'm like, awesome. He didn't have, you look at the goalie coaches now, they're teaching technique and style and what you do. And he unfortunately came from an era where it wasn't relevant. I'm not saying he didn't have a great career and he was amazing in his era, but when it comes to coaching, if you don't know the style and the technique, it was very different. And so it's tough I think for him, it was an irrelevant coaching.
Oh, interesting. I expected him because he's written books on how to do proper goaltending. And
what? A skate save?
What?
Like a skate save back in the 70s when they never went
knee on the ice, left pad out.
Right? I'm just saying, it's the evolution of the game. That'd be like Ken Dryden, brilliant man. Probably one of my favorite goalies ever.
So you were number 29.
Absolutely. Right. But can you imagine him trying to teach his style? No.
Right. Yeah. It's so apples and oranges. Just the only thing shared is the name goalie. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Just the spot where you stand on the ice is the only thing that's the same.
Interesting. Yeah. And the reason I asked about Grant Fuhr earlier is because our first episode was with another former Edmonton Oilers goalie who ended up playing with Phoenix. That was Mike Morrison, and he mentioned that Grant Fuhr wasn't the best goalie coach. So that's why I was trying to gauge if you had an experience with him as the goalie coach. So okay.
No, I didn't have Furzy there, but it's very similar to not all the best players aren't always the best teachers.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Like if you look at all the goalie coaches in the NHL right now, how many of them do you sit there and go, wow, he had an amazing career? Most of them never even played.
Backups are never even played in the NHL.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't even remember all the names now. They've changed so many, but there's like Rob Tallis. He was with Florida as a coach there. There's Bob Essensa. He was their goalie coach in Boston. A lot of names I'm not even familiar with who didn't.
Yeah, there's. I mean, if you looked at the 30 some odd goalie coaches that are out there, I bet you only half of them even played.
I wouldn't be surprised nowadays, but everything is looked at so differently now. We'll actually kind of address a question like that later on, but we'll move on to the next. We only have a few questions left. We have a couple of mop-up questions, and then we're getting on in time there. We're at almost an hour, 40 minutes, but just stories are too exciting.
That's why.
What's that, sorry?
That's because I just talk a lot.
The stories are too good to not listen to them. And if there's time, I might even see if I can get some more of that Tim Thomas story, because I'm sure there are some disappointed viewers who are like, oh, I should have pressed more. So I might be bold by that point. But looking back throughout your entire hockey journey, what would you say is your favorite memory and why?
Oh, there's a few. Winning the Memorial Cup after, I started in the WHL when I was 15. Got told by an owner that traded me that I'd never play in the league again, never mind, go on to have a career. So winning the Memorial Cup was amazing. with such a team we were so close to, that was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
My first start obviously was pretty cool in the NHL.
Right.
I got to play for Team Canada over in Europe.
Oh wow.
So that actually hit me harder than I thought it would when they actually asked me. It was pretty emotional to just wear you're proud to be Canadian.
Absolutely.
And obviously, unless there was a plane crash full of goalies to go down, I was never going to make Team Canada.
Right. I mean, yeah,
right. Like
those guys at Belfort at the time.
I think there was a lot of guys ahead of me on the depth chart.
Mm-hmm.
So, but to go over there and play in, even though it was a nothing tournament over in Budapest, Hungary, but
hey, that's
you were on Team Canada. You know what? I still have a jersey that says Team Canada, so they don't know whether it was, the 94 Canada Cup or whether it was some bullshit tournament over in Budapest. But it was, so that was actually a pretty big thrill.
Oh, yeah. And I got to plug episode number 3 of our show. We actually had Levente Super as our guest in episode 3. Pride of Hungary, closest goalie, closest player from Hungary to almost make it to the NHL.
If I'm not wrong, I think he took over for me in Milan after I left. I think he played.
That makes sense. Yeah, that was around that time frame.
Yeah, I think so. I think he was the goalie after the year I retired.
Interesting. Again, it's a big world, yet in the world of goalies, it's still so small. It's like that 10 degrees of separation at Kevin Bacon game. You can
Bacon, here we go, 6 degrees.
Yeah, can connect everyone back to Georges Vezina, no problem. All right, so since we're on the topic of those great memories, what would you say was your biggest save of all time?
Well, I got, you know what? I'm in Sports Illustrated in the inside cover.
Mm-hmm.
It was Shanahan in Detroit, and we happened to make the inside cover. So the puck actually hit the post, and I covered it, but technically a pretty cool shot because if you look, the camera angle is from above the net.
Right. Yeah, the overhead shot. Yeah, those are awesome.
Shot. It looks really cool. So that would probably be the most publicized one. Other than that, I don't know if there was any super huge saves that were noteworthy, but that was probably the one that got captured and looked the coolest anyway.
That's interesting. I might have to look that one up there. I don't think I've seen it before.
Look it up. It's pretty cool looking.
Oh, one of your family members posted, it's a family trait talking a lot.
See, and they can't even shut up on the text.
Yeah. It gives good material to ask questions from, for sure. So the next question actually has to do directly with game-used memorabilia. Since we are a goaltending museum and memorabilia first and selling cards and stuff as a secondary thing to fund our museum, we have a lot of stuff, and we do have a couple of stuff of yours in the collection. So we'll share our story about our stuff of yours, and then if you have anything, I'd love to see it, and I'm sure the viewers would love to see some of the stuff you have and some stories about it. So we already showed this one off at the start of the episode. So this was your 98-99 season game-used mask you used with Edmonton Oilers and with Hamilton Bulldogs. Very nice design on it that we talked about before, but we're not going to go into the story of what it represents. It's a story for another day. And then, of course, for viewers who aren't aware, anyone who follows our channel and our museum knows that we once had Steve Passmore's first NHL win, Edmonton Oilers jersey in our collection. We acquired it, one of the earliest pieces in it, in fact. And then Mr. Passmore reached out to us and was interested in acquiring it, but anyone who deals with us knows we're extremely stubborn and generally doesn't sell stuff. We're about preserving the history of NHL goaltending, not making business out of it beyond showing off public showcases. So everyone knows the names who played in the NHL. But I produced the idea that I'd be open to a trade. As long as I still have something of Passmore's in the collection, I wouldn't mind. So we came to an agreement. So Mr. Passmore traded an 8x10 autographed photo to us. I have it in my folders, and I don't have it here, but also Phoenix Coyotes era practice glove he traded to us. So out the jersey went to him, glove came to us, and then as part of good karma, the mask actually came up about a week afterwards, and then just everything went the right way. So that's what we have. Mr. Passmore is in the collection. Steve, how about you? What kinds of stuff do you have in your collection, and what are some stuff you're most looking out for that you number one on your want list as well?
Well, you know what? It is funny, and welcome to the world of Facebook, right? Like you happen to randomly post this picture of the jersey, and you're like, "Look what I just added to my collection." And I remember sitting there looking, on, "Holy shit, dude! That's my jersey." And exactly that. I reached out to you, and I appreciate it because that is my first win jersey. So it's got a place in my world. Traded you that glove, and I'm I really respect the fact that you were willing to do that. So thank you. As far as I don't keep anything. I'm not a memorabilia guy. I've got. So this is the only mask I have left. Obviously, I'm not as good at showing it off as you are, but that's the only one that I've got left, and the only reason I kept that one is for my son Brody. Okay. Someday he can hand it down when he tells me that I never played. I can at least prove it.
It's evidence, yeah.
Right. And you know what? Sean Kelso, who we talked about, who was at my first win, always gave me shit because he's like, you need to be collecting sticks. You need to be doing this. And it's not for me. I don't get it. I've got a bunch of jerseys and stuff like that I wore, and they're in a tote.
In a tub, yeah.
Right. So I don't, that's just not my style. It's not what I do. I've got a few of my jerseys. I just donated some autographed sticks.
Oh, nice.
A Probert and a Wendell Clark. And, my coolest one, memorabilia, coolest one ever was Marty Brodeur. Mm-hmm. We're in Jersey, and I'm playing that night, and so is he. Mm-hmm. And we both stretch at the red line. I always stretch at the same place. So did he. And so I remember we're sitting there stretching in the warm up, and kind of look over. He's like, "Hey man," like, "Hey, how you doing? Good, yeah." And I remember I'm like, "So, can I get an autographed stick?" And he's like, and I'm like, "Oh, I'm not going to lie to you. This is not for charity. I'm not giving to some dying kid. I'm like, this is for me. I'm a huge fan." And which is really weird, I guess, when you're talking to a guy that's playing in the same game as you. But I'm like, I'm a huge fan, and I'd love an autographed stick. So being as cool as he was, he actually sent the trainer down with an autographed stick for me right after the game that they beat us 4-1.
Oh, that's nice. It's a little light in the black.
It was a parting gift.
Exactly. Oh, it's nice though to have. I know when I spoke with you the first time there, like you had obviously the Oilers jersey was one you wanted. I think you had a Blackhawks as well. Were you still looking for a Los Angeles sweater of yours, or did you manage to track it down?
No, I'm still actually looking for my LA jersey. I never did find it. I don't know where it's living. I've got my AHL All-Star jersey. I've got my Hamilton jersey. I've got a bunch of jerseys that have come up. Mm-hmm. But I've never found that LA one. And I'm not a huge collector, but it would just be kind of cool to have it.
It's interesting. Like I know there are lots of other people who are looking for your stuff and always pestering me about the ones I have. But I've definitely never seen an LA Kings one of yours pop up there.
No, me neither. It's weird.
It wasn't turned into hockey cards or anything because I know a few Blackhawks sweaters of yours got chopped up, but you wore lots of sweaters, luckily, with them, so it's a loss, but not as unsalvageable. So we'll just have to.
I don't know where it is. So if anybody out there finds it, just let me know.
That's right. Any of you have it, we're coming to your house. Not actually. I got to put a disclaimer on there. People send their lawyers after me.
No, we might.
Not. Definitely not. Awesome. Let's see what we have. Let's see. Bill Allison says he has your 94 Memorial Cup practice jersey. Sean Price says, "Hey, Passy, you want your goalie pants back from the Oilers you gave me? Few tiger stripes were just as good as the day you handed them to me."
See, there's other people that have my memorabilia, but they're actually just using it. It's not like they're hanging it on the wall. They're just using it.
Oh, they were used. Might as well keep using them. I just display them because, it's, again, part of our museum. We right now have almost 21% of all goalies in NHL history represented in it, and it's a lot.
That's impressive.
Yeah, 172 unique goalies we have out of 823 that have played in the NHL in history.
Wow.
It's going to be a lifelong project, but the journey along the way is the best part. So we have one more kind of main question, and then one final question we leave it with, pending any interesting questions from the audience. But 2016, you got to take part in the Oilers alumni celebration at Rexall Place, or as Rexall Place was closed, rather, and Rogers Place was opening up. You got to be among the legends from before your time on the Oilers, your friends and teammates from your playing days, as well as the stars and superstars of today on the Oilers, some of which are still there. From a player's perspective, how was that entire experience for you? And did you have any particularly noteworthy or memorable moments from that event?
It was amazing. I have to, I did say before, the Oilers are cheap, and they were back in the day. But I have to say the ownership group tipped the cap to them. They invited anybody if they'd played, I think it was 3 games or more with the Oilers, you got invited, and
Wow.
They picked up the tab for your flights in, your hotel, everything. And I'm the type of guy, I say no to everything until I think about it. But my initial reaction was, nah, I'm not going to go. Who gives a shit? And then I started thinking about it. It's like, wait a minute, all the boys are going to be there. So I actually said yes, and I actually went, and am I ever glad I did? Like I said, the beer and the bullshit flowed probably about equally on that weekend, because you're talking guys that you played with 25 years ago. And some guys went on to, it was amazing. Some guys went on to have incredible careers. Some guys, that was it. That was their 3 games, and they were just happy to get the invite.
Right.
It was a first-class weekend. We had so much fun. It was really cool to hang out with some of the legends that were there. But overall, I would just say an absolute class act by the Oilers.
Oh, yeah. Well, I remember watching that one on TV, and it was just exciting when they were going through the list of the names there, and then it's just... Did
you watch how many guys had to get up and go for a pee, though, while we were all sitting in that square?
I hadn't noticed, but might have to...
That was a long time.
I remember watching it, though, and it felt like a lot of times, like when you're at like high school and then your name is getting called for some award, and then it's like you hear like Wayne Gretzky, everyone cheering, and then you hear like a lesser name, and then
everybody's like, "Oh, who cares?"
like that. But
I was one of those guys.
Okie dokie. So that's the event. So before we jump to our final question, I'll just address a couple of things I noted down from the long list of comments on the questions on the side there, and then we'll go to our final question, and then that'll be our 5th episode in the books.
Awesome.
So one of the questions here was, further up, someone asked if you'd ever had any particularly bad injuries in your playing career outside of the heavy metal poisoning.
I've blown my knee out 5 times. I had to have my hip repaired because I tore a ligament off the back and ripped the cartilage and everything like that. So I had to have that repaired.
Was that the one in 2003, 2004?
Yeah.
Yeah, you missed like the whole end of the season there, yeah.
Well, it was the hip kept actually popping out. So if I went down the butterfly and went to my left, the hip would actually pop out, and then there was a piece of cartilage off of the bone, and it would catch, and it wouldn't let the hip go back in.
So you should have used the stuff you learned from Tretiak. You could have done the stand-up kind of.
Stand-up. Oh, that was painful. That was painful for sure.
Oh, I believe it. Ouch.
I fractured my ankle that actually nullified a trade to Boston.
Oh, no way. When was that?
When I was with LA. Actually, I hurt myself. I went down awkwardly in practice, and I went off to my trainer, and I'm like, I just broke my ankle. He's like, no, you didn't. I'm like, nope, just broke my ankle. Pretty sure. And he said, no. So whatever, went home and the next day I show up. I'm like, I can't practice. Like, I broke my ankle. Then Bruce Boudreau was the coach, and he calls me in. He's like, Pass, can you play on Wednesday? And this was on, I think, a Monday. And I'm like, no. I'm like, we don't play till Thursday. What do you mean? I'm like, and he's like, you just got traded to Boston, and they need you to play in Boston Gardens on Wednesday. I didn't practice that day, and I'm like, oh, Bruce, I'm like, I can't do it. I'm like, I can't put a skate on right now, and you want me to play in Boston Gardens to try and get back to the NHL. I'm like, nope, not going to happen. So it actually nullified a trade.
Wow, yeah, that's interesting. I never heard about that before. So that's fascinating. Yeah, you would have been backing up, I believe, Byron Defoe at the time. Then
it would have been, it would have been Daffy, but I think those are all the real bad ones. My dad came down to see me in Spokane to play, and I remember. So I wasn't starting that night. I was in playing in Victoria. Wasn't starting. He drove down from Grand Forks to see me. Wasn't starting, so he's a little disappointed that he did the drive to see me play. They pulled the starter. I go in. 5 minutes in, I'm fighting Scott Bailey at center ice. I break my hand on his head. Oh no. I get thrown out of the game. I go up. My dad is pissed. But he goes, and it was funny because I go, he's like, really? I come all this way to see you play, and he goes, you fight 5 minutes in. I'm like, think of it this way. We get to sit and hang out and visit. Positive. And I played the next day. I played the next game with a broken hand.
Gee. Yeah, I just ice it up, and then there you go.
But
the right hand slipped it out of the sleeve.
And it was my right hand, and it was actually my so it was my stick hand. Mm-hmm. And the good thing is the swelling was so bad is once I actually got my hand over the stick, it just swole there and it didn't move.
I can't even let it go. Awesome. Someone asked earlier as well, what do you do today? Since obviously you're not in the NHL anymore. So
I'm not.
The last I checked.
I'm a financial advisor with Sun Life. I run my own business, financial advisor. It's good because I found out I don't work well for other people. So I get to run my own business. I get to help people plan for their futures. Something I wish somebody would have helped me when I was younger, which is with the investing side, the planning side. So that's what I get to do. I get to talk to people, which is, as you can tell, it's something I really enjoy, and I enjoy helping people set their plans together and plan for their future.
Very nice. Yeah, interesting. You notice a lot of former players do end up going into that field, which is quite interesting. But like you said, I mean, it makes sense. It's a natural transition in many ways.
I think it is a natural transition. For one, we're used to dealing with people and being in the public. Mm-hmm. The other thing is most of us enjoyed the social aspect. Mm-hmm. So this way I get to do both. I actually get to help people out, and I get to be social.
Yeah, this is the perfect.
It works out okay.
Another question popped up earlier was, which did you prefer, playing pro hockey in Europe or in North America?
Two totally different things. You can't compare the two. Playing in the NHL, I mean, that's the pinnacle. That's what you dreamed of. It's not quite as glamorous as everybody thinks it was, but it was, that was the ultimate. Mm-hmm. But playing in Europe was more of a lifestyle thing. You got to go and enjoy other cultures, enjoy living in other countries, and so I think they both had their ups and their downs, and Europe was fun. I'm really glad I got to spend my last 3 years in Europe.
Oh, very nice. What motivated you to retire, if you don't mind me asking? Because I think you were only 34 at the time, where
I had my hips were done. So when I was in Italy, which is where I ended my career, so for the last 10 games of playoffs, the doctor was coming in and actually freezing both my hips before games. My hips were they were done. They're hamburger. So he was actually freezing it so I wouldn't feel the pain. So we played the rest of the playoffs, and at the end, I remember just going, I can't keep doing this. Like I'm no doctor, but I know that's probably not good for you when you're freezing your hips.
No kidding, yeah.
So I just decided I wanted to be able to still go and hunt and hike and do stuff I enjoy and spend time with my kid. And I'm like, I had a good run. I think my career was okay. I always said if I could play till I was 35, I was a happy man. And I basically made it there. So I was okay with it.
Okay. That's good. I know I've spoken to some people before where they have a lot of regrets that they couldn't play further. So it's kind of feels like a natural closure by the sounds of it, where it's like not no what ifs, but accept that everything turned out for the best really in the end of the day.
I think so. My body told me I was done. And you know what? I think I did more with my career than it's funny. Looking back now, being a 48-year-old fat kid, I sit there and I can go, you know what? I can objectively say I think my career was all right. Looking back at it when I was in the middle of it, I was really disappointed in my career. I thought I should have been a starter. I thought I should have done better. But in all honesty, once you get older and you get a little more reflection, I look back now and I think it was okay. I think it was okay. And I don't think I'm not disappointed in it. I'm not super impressed by it, but I'm not disappointed.
Well, there's nothing to be really disappointed by. I mean, I mentioned that
we all wanted to do more.
Oh, of course. I mean, everyone has their goal. They want their 8 Vezina trophies, 8 straight Stanley Cups, 100% save average, but not realistic, unfortunately. But I mean, I always say it. Average NHL career for a goalie is very, very short. As I said the number before, there was only like 823 goalies in NHL history to ever make it. That's the entire history of the NHL. That's a tiny, minuscule number. That's number of forwards in a year, pretty much, that play. So just to make it is huge. To last 6 seasons is equally huge. Obviously, you don't last 6 seasons in the NHL if you don't know what the hell you're doing, to be realistic.
I was the backup. My job was to tell jokes and play cards.
That's the best.
That was my whole job.
Still the best.
Every now and then you got to go in there and get hit by stuff. But other than that, tell jokes, play cards, be a good guy in the room. That was it.
It's the emotional support for the team.
Cheerleader.
All right. So we actually are going to come up to the last question. I'll just, in the meantime, I'll let the people, whoever are watching right now, if they have any final last-second questions, to ask it on the side while I'm asking the last question. If there's anything afterwards, then we'll address those. And if not, we'll have a healthy denouement to this discussion. So our final question that I always end the show off with, doesn't matter who the guest is, so as someone who lived a dream that every young player aspires to achieve, do you have any advice for kids or for the parents of a kid who may want to be a pro hockey player one day?
So what do you want first, to the kid or to the parent? The parent?
Whichever you choose.
My advice to the parent: this is not your life and it's not your career. Don't live it through your kids. Stop throwing money at it. It's not I see a lot of parents nowadays look at this as, I think they see it as an investment. And they think there's going to be some financial return at the end. It's not an investment. I mean, if you look, what is it? 0.01% or whatever make it into the NHL of kids that
unless it's a goalie.
Well, regardless whether it's a goalie or not, but it's just let your kid have fun. And if they're good at it, somebody will find them. You don't have to spend $30,000 a year on some academy for grade 9, to get your kid further. They'll find him if he's really good. And I think that's parents, I think, get in the way more than they help a lot of times nowadays anyway, it seems. And then for the kids, be a multi-sport athlete. Don't be a single sport athlete. Like I remember it was funny. I went out to meet a buddy of mine, Craig Kisselback, who we played together in Grand Forks. He's gone on, he's owns a guiding territory, but we went out and we were talking about how we played together all growing up. We couldn't wait for hockey to end and baseball to begin. Like you're at the end of the hockey season and you were actually so excited to play baseball, but then at the end of the baseball season, you were so excited to get back and play hockey again. I think these kids that are playing hockey 12 months a year now, I think they lose that excitement. And I'm not, I'm obviously painting with a large brush, but I think go play many sports, become an actual athlete, and learn different things from different sports that are going to help you become a better hockey player.
That's a good point. And you're not even the first guest on the show to mention that. Must have heard it probably twice now from the other guests. Can't remember which ones off the top of my head, but similar thing where it's, don't make it 12 months of hockey, enjoy it to celebrate other sports. If hockey's your calling, I mean, that's what it'll become. And at least it won't be a miserable experience or you associate it with just business and something you want to do. And the parents living vicariously is an issue in literally every sport. And don't treat it as an investment. I mean, it's still a human being, your kids. So still respect them. Don't try and live a dream that some people can live.
For sure.
See if there's any final comments on the side here. And then we'll wrap it up. So there was someone who noted that I remember that Bailey fight in Spokane. Didn't realize your dad was there. Terry Allison says, say hi to your mom. And someone said, nice to hear you talk and go down memory lane.
Oh, that's Aaron Stavanger. So, okay. Shout out to the hometown. So her husband, Rob, was my absolute hero because we had a junior B team in Grand Forks, the Grand Border Bruins, where Kevin Sawyer and I actually both played for them. I played for them when I was 14. And Rob Stavanger, Aaron's husband, was the goalie there. And he was my absolute hero. I just thought he was the coolest shit. He was the goalie for the Bruins. So there's the hometown coming up again.
That's awesome. Again, what we say, it's a small world that brought even closer together with the social media where you never know who you come across or talk with. See Bill right there saying, great career, buddy. We all loved watching you and are proud. And then Terry says, great interview. So on that note, we have reached that final point of episode number 5 of Interview with an NHL Hero here at Heroes of the Crease. Sure you're all bored of that little banner that's been floating around the bottom for the whole episode there, and you're subliminally just clicking on YouTube and Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and just subscribing to all that because it's been fed into your brains now. But if you haven't, we always appreciate the support. We post up new content about goalie-related stuff every day of the week. YouTube, we do a post once per week. So lots of fun goalie stuff to see and explore. We're all about that life. But on that note, from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank you a lot for taking the time out of your life and doing this show for us. There's really no benefit per se to you. So just the fact that you decided to accept our invite to do this says a lot to us, and we appreciate it. And we always enjoy chatting with any of the pros that played in the NHL, because everyone's story is unique and amazing. And I don't care if someone played 1 game or 1,000 games. Everyone has amazing tales to tell. And this was a fantastic episode, and I can't thank you enough for taking part here with us.
Well, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me, Bruce. You know, like I said, I appreciate the fact that you reached out and gave me my jersey back. So,
absolutely.
I'm here anytime you need me.
All right. Thank you very much. For everyone who's watching, have yourselves an excellent evening. Till next time.